Let's begin with general account of sugar with reference to sugarcane. Previously we are done with the general account of starch with reference to potatoes. Now coming to general account of sugar with reference to sugarcane. So let's start. Firstly we will deal with the sugar, what sugar is. So how can we define sugar? Sugar can be defined as a sweet crystalline substance obtained from various plants, especially sugarcane and sugar beet, consisting essentially of sucrose and used as a sweetener in food and drink. This is just a general definition of sugar. Now in terms of biochemistry, more precisely, sugars can be defined as any of the class of soluble, crystalline, typically sweet tasting carbohydrates found in living tissues and are best exemplified by glucose and sucrose. Glucose and sucrose, they both are soluble crystalline and taste sweet and are carbohydrates, therefore we refer to them as sugars. There are many other sugars apart from glucose and sucrose. We will have a look. Firstly, in terms of biochemistry, we will see how sugars can be classified. Well, sugars can be classified on the basis of the monomeric number of the units a sugar consists of. We have first class, that is simple sugar. These are the monosaccharides and are the simplest group of carbohydrates and are often referred to as simple sugars. They are made up of just one unit. For example, we are having glucose, mannose, galactose, fructose, etc. Next is disaccharide or double sugars or compound sugars. They are sweet in taste but are made up of two monosaccharide units held together by a glycosidic bond. For example, we are having sucrose, maltose, lactose. Then we are having another category of the compound sugars, that is trisaccharides. These are also sweet but are made up of three monosaccharide units held by two glycosidic bonds. Then in carbohydrates, another term is polysaccharides, in which many monosaccharide units join together to form polysaccharides, like we have starch, cellulose. But remember, these are not referred, polysaccharides are not referred to as sugars as they are tasteless. Now let's again have a look at the classification of the sugars. Sugars, as I said, on the basis of the number of monomeric units, sugars can be classified as monosaccharides made up of one unit. For example, we are having glucose, galactose, mannose and fructose. Then disaccharides or double sugars made up of two monomeric monosaccharides. We are having sucrose, lactose, maltose, and then we are having trisaccharides. In trisaccharides, we are having an example of maltotriose and raffinose. We will have a look at their biochemical structure. So let's begin. Firstly, let's draw the structure of glucose. Glucose, as you know, in previous lecture I have told you, it's made up of 6 carbon units. So let's draw 6 carbon units. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. And at the carbon number 1, we are having an aldehyde group, which is C double bond OH. And then at carbon number 2, in glucose, we are having OH on the right hand side and H on the left hand side. Then on the next carbon, that's carbon number 3, H will go on right side and OH on left side. And then OH will be on right side, H on left side, OH right side, H on left side, again OH here, H here and H here. And this completes the molecule of glucose. Remember, if you have to draw the structure of the glucose, draw 6 carbons, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Attach an aldehyde group at the carbon number 1, C double bond OH. Make it aldehyde group. You know, aldehyde group is CHO. Make carbon number 1 as aldehyde group. Number next, put at the carbon number 2, put OH on the left hand side and H on the right hand side. On all other carbons, on the carbon number 3, you will put H on the H on the right hand side and OH on the left hand side. On all other carbons, remaining carbons, you will put OH on the right hand side, and this will be glucose. Next to glucose, we are having another simple sugar which we call as mannose. Mannose is structurally similar to glucose, except at the carbon number 2 you will have a difference. OH and H will be flipped. That is, if you look at the glucose, here OH on the carbon number 2 is on the right hand side, but here H is on the right hand side in mannose, and then here on the left hand side we are having H in glucose, but here on the left hand side we are having OH. Rest is similar to that of glucose. Now why D-glucose, D-mannose? I have told you in the previous lecture. This depends upon the carbon adjacent to the carbon holding the terminal OH group. So we are having carbon number 6 as the carbon holding the terminal OH group, and adjacent to it is carbon number 5. If you look at the carbon number 5 orientation of the carbon number 5, OH is on the right hand side, so it will be D-mannose. Had it been on the left hand side, we would have called it as L-mannose. Similarly here, OH is on right hand side, we call it as D-glucose. Had it been on left hand side, we would have called it as L-glucose. Now another simple sugar is galactose. So let's have a look. Galactose is also similar to that of glucose, only at the carbon number 4, 1, 2, 3 and 4, the orientation of H and OH as compared to glucose has flipped. Now just see 1, 2, 3 and 4, fourth carbon of the glucose. Here OH is on the right hand side and H is on the left hand side. But here the orientation is reverse. H is on the this right hand side and OH is on the left hand side. This is the structural difference between glucose and galactose. Rest is similar. So we are having D-galactose, and the only difference with between glucose and D-galactose is at carbon number 4. Likewise, in mannose and glucose, only difference is at carbon number 2. Now remember, if two monosaccharides differ from each other around a single carbon atom, they are called as epimers. So if we will see mannose and glucose, they differ just only in orientation around one carbon atom, that is in case of mannose and glucose, orientation is only in C2, different in C2 carbon, so they can be referred as epimers. So glucose and mannose are epimers with regard to carbon number 2. Similarly, glucose and galactose are epimers to each other with regard to carbon number 4. Remember, galactose and mannose, they are not epimers because their difference lies between two carbon atoms. If we will see, galactose and mannose, they will be different at two carbon atoms. On carbon number 2, they will be having different orientation, and as well as in carbon number 4, they will be having different orientation. So they can't be referred to as epimers to each other, as we know epimers vary from each other around a single carbon atom. But mannose and glucose, they are epimers. Mannose and galactose are not epimers, but galactose and glucose are epimers. These sugars are further, we can say, these sugars are reducing since they have free aldehyde group of anomeric carbon. Now see, their functional groups are free, okay. Here we are having a free aldehyde group, free, it's not bound to anything. So we can say that these are reducing sugars, they will go oxidation reduction reactions. So we can refer glucose, mannose and galactose as reducing sugars. Now another is sweetest sugar, most sweetest sugar, it's also monosaccharide, a simple sugar, and that is fructose. Now see, fructose is also 6 carbon atom. It's having structural similarity to glucose, but only on glucose you have aldehyde group, but here you have keto group, and we are having 6 carbon atoms. It is CH2OH on the first carbon, then we are having keto group on second carbon. Keto group is a functional group in case of fructose, and then the rest is similar to that of glucose. And remember, fructose is the sweetest sugar among all the naturally occurring sugars, and it's mainly found in fruits and in honey. Now let's have a look at the structure of compound sugars. Compound sugars, you know, they are made up of many monosaccharide units. Like we have disaccharide, sucrose. Sucrose, you see, it is the sugar we consume at our home. So it's also called as table sugar. It's made up of two monosaccharides. One is glucose and another is fructose, held together by a glycosidic bond. Okay, sucrose is the common sugar that we consume at home, also called as table sugar. Many a times when we say sugar, it means sucrose. It's a disaccharide made up of one alpha D glucose unit and a beta D fructose unit, held together by a glycosidic bond alpha 1 and beta 2. It means first carbon of this glucose is involved in bond formation and second carbon of fructose is involved in bond formation. Now if you remember, glucose is having the functional group at carbon number 1 and fructose is having the keto group at the carbon number 2. Here we see bond is formed between carbon number 1 of glucose and carbon number 2 of fructose. It is these carbons who are holding the functional groups. So their functional groups get engaged in forming a bond and hence are not available to perform the reactions. That is why we say sucrose is a non-reducing sugar. It's also referred to as cane sugar because it's the main sugar which is extracted from the sugar cane. Now more about sucrose. Sucrose is a major carbohydrate produced in photosynthesis. It's transported to the storage organs of the plant such as root, tubers and seeds. It is most abundant sugar among the naturally occurring sugars. You know, most sweet sugar is fructose and the most abundant sugar among naturally occurring sugars is sucrose. Now you see, sucrose is formed in the plants, in the source cells, for example, leaf, and from leaf to roots to non-photosynthesizing organs. It is transported. It has a distinct advantage of transportation because since it's both the functional groups are engaged, they are occupied, and hence it's an inert sugar and can be easily transported without any oxidative attacks on its root. So we say sucrose is the main sugar present in the plant. It is the main sugar which is transported in plants, and because of its non-reducing nature, because of its involvement of the aldehyde and ketone group, they are masked, and as a result of that, it is safe to translocate it on its way. It does not get engaged in any oxidative attacks. Another important about it is that it's an important source of dietary carbohydrate. The carbohydrate we consume contains sucrose, and in intestines it's hydrolyzed by the enzyme sucrase back into glucose and fructose, which are then absorbed. Now another disaccharide or double sugar is maltose. It's composed of glucose and two glucose units, and the free aldehyde it is alpha 1,4 by alpha 1,4 glycosidic bonds. It is the carbon number 1 which contains functional aldehyde group engages with carbon number 4 and they form a glycosidic bond. But here on the second carbon, carbon number 1 which contains the aldehyde group is still free. It can this cyclic form can acquire the linear form and get engaged to form the reactions, oxidative reactions or reducing reactions. So we can say maltose is a reducing sugar since it answers the reducing reactions. Now another sugar is isomaltose. Isomaltose is different from maltose because there we have alpha 1,6 glycosidic bond, that is carbon number 1 or carbon number 1 of one glucose and carbon number 6 of another glucose engaged to form a glycosidic bond. Well, maltose is a component of malt. What is malt? It's a substance obtained in the process of allowing grain to soften in water and germinate. It's also present in highly variable quantities in partially hydrolyzed starch products like maltodextrin, corn syrup, and acid thin starch. Now coming to another disaccharide or double sugar, that is lactose. Lactose, as you know, it's a milk sugar and is found in milk. It's composed of beta D galactose and beta D glucose. So it's made up of glucose and galactose held by beta 1,4 linkage, and the anomeric carbon of C1 carbon of the glucose is free. This carbon, it's not C1 carbon is here of the glucose. It's not involved in any bond formation, so it can again take the Fischer projection open from here and take part in the oxidative reduction reactions. So we can say lactose is again a reducing sugar. Then we have maltotriose. Maltotriose is a trisaccharide. It is a trisaccharide consisting of 3 glucose molecules linked by alpha 1,4 glycosidic bonds. Here we are having alpha 1,4 glycosidic bond, means here carbon number 1 engaged with carbon number 4. Again the carbon number 1 of this glucose engaged with the carbon number 4 of this. So they form glycosidic bond. Here 3 glucose units are involved, and the carbon number 1 of third glucose unit is free. It contains a free functional group, and its maltotriose is a reducing sugar. So to revise, we are having glucose, galactose, mannose, fructose, which are all reducing sugars. Then we are having disaccharides, wherein we find sucrose. We find it as it is non-reducing sugar. Then we have lactose, it is reducing. Then we have maltose, that's also reducing. Then we have a trisaccharide maltotriose, it's also a reducing sugar. Now coming to another part of our topic, that is sugar from sugarcane. Now firstly, if we will talk about the plant sugarcane, it is botanically called as Saccharum officinarium. It's a perennial grass. Perennial, you know, it remains for many years and is from the family Poaceae. Poaceae, you know, it's the grass family and is primarily cultivated for its juice from which sugar is processed. About 70% of the sugar produced globally comes from a species of sugarcane called Saccharum officinarium and hybrids of this species, and most of the rest is made from sugar beets, that's Beta vulgaris. Sugarcane cultivation requires a tropical or subtropical climate. It is one of the most efficient photosynthesizers in the plant kingdom, and it's having C4. It's a C4 plant, C4 mechanism of photosynthesis. And although some sugarcanes produce seeds, but modern stem cutting has become the most common reproduction method. So we propagate this sugarcane vis-a-vis the stem cuttings. Each cutting must contain at least one bud. Now coming to harvesting of the sugarcane. Once the sugarcane crop is ready, it's ripe, we do harvest it. That is at a proper time when the peak maturity has been attained by the plant. By adopting right techniques, it is necessary to realize maximum weight of the malleable canes. Malleable canes are the canes which are capable to produce sugar with at least with least possible field losses under the given environment condition. Harvesting either underaged or overaged cane with improper method of harvesting can lead to the loss in cane yield, sugar recovery, or poor juice quality. So we have to ensure that we harvest the sugar cane at the right time. If we will harvest underaged or overaged cane, it can lead to less yield in case of sugar, in case of juice. Now there are two methods of harvesting the sugarcane. One is manual method, in which hand knives, cutting blades or hand axes are used for manual harvesting. It requires skilled laborers, as improper harvest of cane leads to loss of cane and sugar yield, poor juice quality, and problems in milling due to extraneous batter. So we have to harvest this sugarcane in a very proper and skilled manner. Then another is mechanical harvesting. Sugarcane is harvested by mechanical harvester, as you can see here, which moves along the rows of the cane, removing leafy tops of the cane and cutting the stalk into short pieces or billets. Billets are then loaded into bins, which are towed alongside the harvester. When full, the bins are taken by the road to the sugar mill. Now comes processing of the sugarcane. First step is cleaning or crushing. Cleaning and crushing. The stalks are first thoroughly washed of any mud, etc. After cleaning, a machine led by a series of rotating knives shreds the grain into pieces, and this process of shredding is known as grinding of the sugarcane. Hot water is sprayed onto the sugarcane to dissolve any remaining hard sugar. The smaller pieces of the cane are then spread out on a conveyor belt. Here is this machine where you can see the sugar canes are shredded into smaller pieces and then are moved through a conveyor belt. Number next is juicing. The shredded pieces, the broken pieces of sugarcane travel on a conveyor belt through a series of heavy duty rollers. They exert pressure on these canes which extract juice from the pulp. The raw juice moves on through the mill to be clarified, and from here the juice is moved through the mill for further clarification. This is here the pressure is applied on the canes and the sugar is extracted. Another step is clarifying. Carbon dioxide and the milk of the lime are added to the liquid sugar mixture and it's heated to the boiling point as the process of clarification begins. As carbon dioxide travels through the liquid, it forms calcium carbonate which attracts non-sugar debris like fats, gums and waxes are there from the juice and pulls them away from the sugar juice. The juice is then pushed through a series of filters to remove any remaining impurities. Another is evaporation. The clear juice which results from clarifying process, which is free from fats, gums and wax, is put under a vacuum where the juice boils at a low temperature and begins to evaporate. It is heated until it forms into thick brown syrup. Next is crystallization. By evaporating what little water is left in the sugar syrup, crystallization takes place. Inside a sterilized vacuum pan, the sugar is fed into a pan as the liquid evaporates, causing the formation of crystals. The remaining mixture is a mass of large crystals which is sent to centrifuge to spin and dry the crystals. The dried product is called as raw sugar and is still inedible. Now begins the refinery or purification. Raw sugar is transported to a cane sugar refinery for removal of molasses. Molasses are, as you will see, these are the residual impurities, minerals and other non-sugars which still contaminate the sugar. This is known as purification process. Raw sugar is mixed with a solution of sugar and water to loosen the molasses from the outside of the raw sugar crystals, producing a thick matter known as magma. Large machines then spin the magma which separates the molasses from the crystals. Crystals are promptly washed, dissolved and filtered to remove impurities. The golden syrup which is produced is then sent through filters to remove the color and water. What's left is concentrated clear syrup which is again fed into a vacuum pan. This is the process of refinery or purification. And finally, once the final evaporation is done and the drying process is done, screens separate the different sized sugar crystals. Large and small crystals are packaged and shipped and labeled as white refined sugar, which we find in our homes. It's important to know that the refined white sugar is 99.9% sucrose. White sugar is pure sucrose containing no preservatives or additives. So the table sugar in our homes, it is sucrose, the structure of which and its importance we have already dealt in previous slides. Now if you will sum up, we are having the canes first, they are then sugar cane, they are then juiced, we are having partial purification to raw cane sugar, and this process is known as milling. We can say these all steps we call as till we get raw sugar, we call these processes as milling, and then the refining or the final purification of the raw sugar, it's termed as refining. So we have two processes, milling and refining. Milling means the process of the cane sugar from its harvesting till we obtain the raw sugar from it, while as refining means converting the raw sugar into white sugar. Now, byproducts of sugarcane processing. During the sugarcane processing, we don't only get sucrose crystals, we get many byproducts. So let's have a look. Firstly is raw sugar. As you know, it's formed if the final refining process is bypassed. If we only do milling, we get raw sugar, but it's inedible. Then we are having brown sugar. Brown sugar is a sucrose sugar product with a distinctive brown color due to presence of molasses. It contains its sugar, but it is still having certain impurities with it. It's either an unrefined or partially refined soft sugar consisting of sugar crystals with some residual molasses content. See, raw sugar is totally unrefined, brown sugar is partially refined. Then another important byproduct of this is sugarcane juice. It's liquid extract, as you know, and it's consumed as a beverage in many places, especially where the sugarcane is commercially grown. Then also we can obtain gur or jaggery from the sugarcane. Number next is molasses. The result of the first boiling and removal of sugar crystals is first molasses, which have the highest sugar content because comparatively little sugar has been extracted from the source. Second molasses is created from a second boiling and sugar extraction and has slight bitter taste to its taste. The third boiling of the sugar syrup makes blackstrap molasses. The majority of the sucrose from the original juice till now has been crystallized, but blackstrap molasses is still mostly sugary by calories, and it contains vitamins and is used as health supplement which is fed to cattle. Molasses or black treacle. It's a viscous product resulting from refining sugarcane or sugar beets into sugar. And remember that from molasses we can also prepare yeast. These are the molasses. Now another byproduct is bagasse. The pulp that remains or is known as bagasse. It's dried and used as fuel. It's used as biofuel for the production of heat, energy, and electricity. It's simply the crushed cane fibers. If you remember the step juicing, when we perform the juicing of the sugar cane, what remains behind is the pulp of the cane that we term as bagasse. This is bagasse. Number next is ethanol. Sugarcane can also be used to make ethanol. It's also a byproduct of sugarcane processing, a liquid that can be used as an auto fuel or a gasoline additive. Is an excellent feedstock because the biomass of the sugarcane plant is relatively rich in the sugar that can be readily turned into fuel. Brazil is the world's leading producer of sugarcane ethanol, and it's estimated that upward of 40% of Brazil's transportation energy needs are met by the sugarcane ethanol. This is the ethanol plant set up at the sugarcane fields. And the last product, not last, but it's rum. Rum is a distilled beverage made from sugarcane byproducts such as molasses, sugarcane juice by process of fermentation and distillation. The distilled clear liquid is then usually aged in oak and other barrels. And finally, the rum is obtained. This is all about the sugarcane. Thank you.